Welcome back to another episode of Now That's Interesting, where we dive deep into the strange, the bizarre, and the downright horrifying. Today we're exploring one of the darkest corners of human history: gruesome torture methods. Now, a quick disclaimer: this episode will cover some very disturbing topics, so viewer discretion is advised. Torture has been used for centuries as a method of punishment, interrogation, and even entertainment in some societies. While the methods vary, they all share one thing in common: they were designed to inflict maximum pain and suffering. Let's start with one of the most infamous and feared torture devices from medieval Europe, the Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is a sarcophagus-like device lined with spikes on the inside. Victims were forced into this coffin, and once the door was shut, the spikes would pierce their bodies. However, the spikes were often positioned to miss vital organs, prolonging the agony for hours, even days. Some historians debate whether this device was ever used in reality, or if it was more of a legend, but the very idea of it has left a lasting impression on our collective consciousness. Imagine the horror of being locked inside, your body slowly impaled from all sides, knowing there's no escape. The psychological torment, combined with the physical pain, made the Iron Maiden a symbol of terror. But medieval Europe didn't have a monopoly on gruesome torture methods. Let's jump to the east, where one of the most notorious methods of execution in ancient China was Ling Chi, or death by 1,000 cuts. Ling Chi was a method of slow and excruciating execution. The victim's flesh was methodically cut from the body in small pieces, often starting with the limbs and moving toward the torso. This process could take hours, with the victim remaining conscious for much of it. Ling Chi was reserved for the most serious of crimes, such as treason, and served as a brutal reminder of the state's power over life and death. This wasn't just about causing pain, it was about degradation. The slow dismemberment ensured that the victim would not only suffer, but would also die in the most humiliating and painful way imaginable. Next, let's look at a method that combined the cruelty of torture with the harsh elements of nature. Known as scaphism, this was an ancient Persian method of execution designed to kill the victim slowly through a combination of exposure, insects, and infection. The victim would be stripped naked and placed inside a hollowed-out tree trunk or between two boats, with only the head, hands, and feet protruding. They were then force-fed milk and honey until they developed severe diarrhea, which would attract insects. The victim would be smeared with more honey, drawing flies and other pests that would feast on the exposed flesh. Over time, the insects would breed within the body, leading to a slow, agonizing death by infection and starvation. Scaphism is perhaps one of the most grotesque torture methods in history, combining elements of nature in a horrifyingly inventive way. The process could take days, even weeks, making it a truly nightmarish ordeal. Finally, we move to Europe once more, where one of the simplest yet most brutal forms of torture was the rack. The rack was a device that slowly stretched the victim's body, dislocating joints and tearing muscles, ligaments, and cartilage. Victims were tied to the device, and rollers at either end would be turned, pulling the limbs in opposite directions. The intense pressure on the body was excruciating, and it often resulted in the victim being crippled or killed. The rack was especially feared because of its simplicity and effectiveness. It didn't require any elaborate setup or special conditions, just the will to inflict unimaginable pain. The psychological terror alone was enough to extract confessions, whether they were true or not. Torture methods like these remind us of the darkest aspects of human nature, our capacity for cruelty, and the lengths we've gone to in order to control and dominate others. It's a grim chapter of history, but one that we must remember to ensure it's never repeated. Thanks for joining us on this chilling journey through history. If you found this episode interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And let us know in the comments what other topics should we explore next on Now That's Interesting. For now, stay curious.